Palatka, and Putnam County. We're excited about that. We are excited about that. There's no way that we could get a more qualified individual. How many of you have read his book or has a copy of his book? You know, oh, that's wonderful. If you want additional copies, there's copies of the book downtown on 2nd Street at the shop there. But, you know, when you read his book, if you haven't, let me encourage you to do that, because every place that he mentions Pensacola or Escambia County, you could write in the word Palatka in Putnam County, and it fits perfectly. So we're real honored to have him and his team here. We're excited about what they're going to do for us, and we're glad that you're here to be a part of the journey. Thank you for coming. And Quint, thank you for being here. Let's give Quint a round of applause.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. It's kind to be here. Little bit about, as you know, I'm not an urban planner, so I'm not. I'll talk. I like them. I've learned a lot going through here. I don't have any training in that. Of course, I didn't have any training in how to run hospitals, and I did pretty well for a while there too. My background is a special education teacher, for those that you are unaware of that. And it's interesting because one of the things I find is sometimes we're prepared for something. We're preparing for something that we don't even know we're preparing for until we get to that moment. One of those things. I've read a book one time called Uncommon Friends, and it's about a fellow who in Fort Myers, Florida, ended up having different friends. His dad was a realtor, and they put up a statue, and who was it? Thomas Edison lived there, and his wife didn't like the statue. So she met this young guy because it was like a naked statue. So they said, if we don't like that, so he ended up taking it down, and she liked him, so she invited him over, and so he got to know Thomas Edison. Well, as he got to know Thomas Edison, Henry Ford took a liking to him because he lived next door to Thomas Edison, and he got to know Henry Ford. And then Harvey Firestone lived down the street, and he got to know him, and he ended up liking him. He ended up going to Akron with Harvey Firestone for a while, and then ended up with Charles Lindbergh, this whole thing, and it was called Uncommon Friends, and it had a real impact on me. Now, I'll tell you where I bring this up. Now, he spent a lot of his life in Fort Myers, Florida, and as he was, my dad was dying, he was in hospice in Fort Myers, Florida. When I went out to sit on the park bench, it had been donated by him. And I thought, so who would have known when I read that book that would come back at that time? People asked me when I was at a hospital in Chicago, how can a guy with a special ed degree run a hospital? And I shared with them what you learn as a special ed teacher, because I think it's a lot of the same skills you learn through life. Number one is the first thing you'd learn is to diagnose. So many of you filled out the survey, 300 people filled out the survey. That was to diagnose. Because too many times somebody comes in with a new book or a new thing, and they're gonna, that's the big rage, and everybody's gonna jump on the bandwagon. But you have to diagnose the patient or the child first. First thing you diagnose. The second thing you do, of course, if you're teaching anybody, you wanna maximize their human potential. In fact, my company, which I sold a couple of years ago, Studer Group, our vision statement said to help people maximize their human potential. Our mission statement said to make healthcare better for patients, physicians, and employees. And when you have a child with special needs, you have different potentials. One of the big potentials, which sometimes can't be met, is to get them as independent as possible. Because can they ever live without mom or dad? And some can and some can't. If you ever come to a Blue Wahoo baseball game, you're all invited. They're in Pensacola, Florida. They're a double-A team. I guarantee you, by the time you sit in your seat, you'll have dealt with 4 adults who have special needs, because we hire a lot of people as part of a job training program. So what happens is you set a goal, and the goal can be varied, but many times it's to make this person as independent as possible. In fact, my first book was packaged by a sheltered workshop. In fact, our brain bags in Pensacola, Florida, that we give to moms when the child is born is actually put together by a sheltered workshop in Pensacola, Florida, once again, trying to do that. So you set a goal. The third thing you do is you try to get everyone sort of on the same team. Now, I will tell you, you'll never do that in a city. You just can't. It's sort of like, are there any physicians in here? Okay. Well, I worked in the medical field for a lot of time. And, sometimes people generalize. Have you ever met anybody that generalizes? Everybody's unhappy. Everybody hates this. The big generalization is always the good old boys. Ever heard that one? I've never been able to trace down who's a member of the good old boys in any city I've ever been in, except usually they're pretty good people that actually do a lot of really good things for the community. I get a little criticism in Pensacola because I own a lot of stuff now. And people say to me, well, he's just trying to make money. And I said, well, you should hope so, because I put it back into the community. We hire all local people. I take no salary myself. Any profits we take, we go right back into the community. The book, if you buy a book, it goes to early brain development in Escambia County. So wouldn't it make sense? Don't you hope local people make money? You'd rather have your money go out of town? Doesn't make a lot of sense. So you set a goal. You try to get everybody on the same page. I got one last doctor story for you, though. Doctor comes up to me and says, I just want you to know the entire medical staff is unhappy. I said, I know that's not true. They've never agreed on anything in their whole life. Or you have, the other thing we stopped, this is like we decided let's be an adult city, not an adult child city. Because children come and tell on someone, and then they say, but I can't tell you who. And that's the other good way to stop things, is when somebody brings something to you anonymously, say, unless it's illegal or unethical that I should report it, I don't want to know. Unless you can carry the message yourself, don't tell me. Because otherwise you're just dealing with, I know there's some elected officials here. I already apologize for what I'm going to say. I had a city council one say, I'm getting a lot of emails from my constituencies. I said, can you define a lot? How many have you really gotten? He goes, 2. So that word a lot is another word you hear. A lot, a lot, a lot. But you try to get a critical mass. Somebody asked me years ago when I was working in hospitals, can you do what you do for communities? And at the time I said, I don't think so. I said, there's some advantages of doing this in a place, creating a great place for people to work. Well, one of the great advantages you have is you do the hiring and you do the selection. Well, you can influence who you hire pretty well. Another good thing is you usually have sort of a person that can set the goals. And they're not usually an elected person, so they don't have to deal with that whole process of being an elected official. So you have a CEO who sets the goals. You normally have measurement, even if everybody doesn't agree to it, the CEO agrees to it, so you have sort of that. The other thing, and please don't take this wrong, but you can fire people. Ever had a neighbor you'd like to just fire? Just walk up to them and say, you know what, you're out of the neighborhood. You got 30 days. I might give you an outplacement, a severance package. I'll find you another community to live in. By the way, we used to laugh like that, when you have an employee who's difficult. You ever have an employee? How many of you have ever worked with a coworker that sucked the life out of you? And you find out they quit, and you go, oh my God, there is a God. This is a good day. Something like that. So, and that's sort of tough. And so you can't do that. So I don't think you ever get everyone on the same page in any place, but you try to get as many people as you can. And if you get as many people as you can really move something. In a community, that's probably about 55 to 56% of the people. If you can get more than half sort of on the same page with you, you can create some unbelievable things. Our first big move, and if you've read the paper, was a referendum. We wanted to take some toxic soil downtown Pensacola and put a park there. But it was going to mean that taxpayers were going to have to pay for the park and to get downtown toxic soil removed. Pretty soon it was all sorts of rumors. The land's being given to somebody for $1. People are making a lot of money. Boom, 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 boom. It ended up passing 56 to 44. But that was really, so we had 7,000 people still voting against a park, and it's our toxic soil, and darn it, we're going to keep it here. And it doesn't mean they felt strongly. And part of the strong thing is they just didn't trust what was happening. So we didn't have a lot of trust there. But that worked out real well, and that park's been a huge hit. I still get people coming up to me apologizing for being against it, saying they didn't understand it. That 6,798 people were sitting at that park, not this Saturday, the Saturday before, watching our college. We didn't have a football team at our college before the park was built. And once the park got built, they said, well, we have a place to play now. Now we have a college football team. Came in second in the nation last year in Division II football. And all of a sudden you have 6,798 people at a game. And one of the ladies who came up to me who was against this whole thing said, I just got to tell you I was wrong. Now, I'm not sure everybody will tell you you're wrong, but that's a little bit. And the other thing I've learned in this journey with special ed teachers, besides setting the goal, you have to look at the bright spots. Because sometimes journey is a long one. I worked at a school that had children that had severe handicaps. Sometimes they were nonverbal, and sometimes they were quite old. And we had a girl, I remember, when she'd see a popsicle, she'd get so excited, she'd put it in her mouth even before the wrapper was off. And I was teaching next in the next classroom one day, and I heard a whole bunch of yelling and cheering, and I walked over, and everybody was cheering because she had taken off the wrapper. Now, what I'm trying to say is this is a long journey. This ain't a quick turnaround. This didn't get like this overnight, and it's not going to get back overnight if you look at the community. The population compared to other counties, the downtown compared to other counties. I'm not trying to be hurtful. I'm trying to be helpful. One of the things that I talked to another group, and I mentioned Beth Keene. It's American Breast Cancer Month here. And Beth Keene died of breast cancer. She was one of the employees at Studer Group, had been there a long time. She was probably about 50. She 4 boys, I think 20 to about 30. And I remember about a month before she died being with her, and she was writing long letters to all her 4 sons, because she knew 3 of them she'd never meet, whoever they married. She wouldn't meet many of her grandchildren because she only had 1. But she did a talk, and it was called Spinach in Your Teeth. And what she talked about is when you really care about somebody, you tell them when they have spinach in their teeth. You ever notice? I go around, people come up to you and you wish you would have known like before. You speak for an hour with shaving cream in your ear, and when you're done, they say, you got some shaving cream in your ear. Or you don't know how to pronounce Putnam, so you pronounce it Putman. Anyway, something like that. But when you care about somebody, you tell them they have spinach in their teeth. And sometimes you have to give a message that's not as pleasant as you would like. You've done that. When I show you the survey results, you've told the community, in a way, you've got spinach in your teeth. But thank gosh you did. I will tell you, when you see your survey results, over 300 of you filled out the survey. And Michael, I want to thank him for the local newspaper, because that's really vital here. And he will tell you that's a pretty good amount to get 300 surveys back. You've been involved. And let's give the newspaper here a nice round of applause for that. So I'm going to give you the results. And I don't think anyone will say they're too low. You might say they're too high, but let me tell you what they are. So and one thing nice about this, I asked a person one day who invests private equity in companies. His name is Harry Gruner, and I always try to give names and specifics. And he's a managing partner at JMI, which is a rather large private equity firm. And I asked him one day, when you decide to invest in companies, what do you look at? And he said the 2 main points are, we look at the founder, because that's the key here, and we look at how self-aware are they, and are they coachable? And the neat part about your results, I'm sure there were some higher ones, but overall, there's a lot of consistency. And you can't turn something around if everybody doesn't think it needs to be turned around. So the good news is you're not in the world of denial. I worked in a drug and alcohol treatment facility for 3 years. There's denial at times when a person comes in. You are not in denial, so let me walk through. So what I'd like you to walk through, I'm walking through your survey results. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what this is all about. And it's true, you're paying us $20,000 over 5 months, so I'd like you to know that. It's a heck of a deal, by the way. I will let you know that. And just so you know that, none of the money comes to me personally. I'm a community volunteer. I'm lucky enough to sell my company. I do this because of passion. But I have other people that work with me, and they've never sold a company. So they've got to sort of like feed kids, things like that. And we want you to walk out also being ready to help us to the next step. Because we're going to do another survey. Michael's going to put in the newspaper. Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to donate $1,000 to you, the newspaper, and then when people tie in, if they give us their name, we'll pick one name out of the hat of people that put in, and we'll give them $1,000. Will that get you going a little bit? Okay, so because it's important. So now I'm down to 19,000. Okay, you're getting it back. So I want you to help us say the question I'm going to ask you to fill in the survey is, what can downtown do to get you to want to go there? And I'm going to tell you why downtowns are important. It's not because, Quint's a downtown guy. It's, I want what you want. And when we survey adults, you know what the number one thing they really want is my children to be able to stay home if they want to. Not that we want all our kids to stay home, but we want them to have that choice if they want to. Instead of being a doctor and going to another city, instead of working in another factory somewhere, instead of working, we want them to have opportunities in this county, in this city. Now, when you look at young people today, for the first time ever, according to James Fallows, who wrote the book Our Town, for the first time ever, people, we call reverse migration. Because in the past, somebody graduates or gets out of high school, and they go to a big city. And they go to a big city, not because they want to be in a big city, but they want the opportunity of a big city. But now they want something more than the opportunity of the big city. They want the vibrant lifestyle of a big city. They want to go to coffee shops. They want to go hear live music. They want to bike. My son lives in Chicago, and he bikes. I got a kick out of young people today. You know how they brag about? I mean, when I was trying to, excuse the language, romance a person, I would talk about my car. My son brags that he doesn't have a driver's license. That's like a pickup line now. You know, I don't drive, I don't have a license. Oh, wow, you're something. It's amazing. Kids now, it's how long I'm going to wait to get my license instead of the permit. So when I say, why do we want a great downtown? It's because we want these young people, they want to move out of some of the big cities, but they still want to have a place that's got a sizzle to it, a buzz to it. You know what else we're finding out? People over the age of 60, guess where they want to live more and more? Close to downtown. So they can walk, they can do those types of things. That's not for everybody, but that makes a big difference. It also makes you more financially secure, because downtowns, because of their density, can be great for taxes because they don't take up as much land, as much space. Great for many things. So let me walk through. So when you leave here, we want you to do a survey later and say, what can be downtown that would excite you? What would make you want to hang out downtown? What would make you want to be downtown? So here's the survey results. On a scale of 1 through 10, how engaged are your community citizens? You gave us a 3, which is you that are here probably are higher, but that's good. That's where it starts. It starts with a small group, and it grows. How likely are young people willing to live and work in the community after graduating from high school? You gave this a 2.12 on a 10-point scale. One thing I think is really important to build trust is to just be transparent and lay it out. So that's part of this right now. Here's what it is, and it's your results. One time I was sharing some physician satisfaction results with a bunch of hospital people, and it was pretty negative. And they started attacking me. And I said, my gosh, it's your docs that filled out the survey. I didn't. On a scale of 1 to 10, how attractive is your town to new business or talent? You gave it a 2.13. On a scale of 1 through 10, how easy is it to create and run a small business in your community? You gave it a 2.73. And I'm going to talk about how important all these are, but especially that one. On a scale of 1 through 10, how strong is your education system? You gave it a 2.89. On a scale of 1 through 10, how likely are small business owners to receive training and development they need to thrive long term? You gave it a 2.58. On a scale of 1 through 10, how vibrant is your downtown? You gave it a 2.49. On a 1 through 10, getting wealth off the sidelines. Let me explain what that is. Every community has wealthy people, okay? And I'm one of those. Now, when I went into special ed, I didn't plan on being wealthy. It's just one of those things that happen. I didn't plan on being wealthy this whole time. I'm sort of amazed by it myself. Anyway, but that means that I have discretionary income. Now, when I sold my company in 2000 something for like a little bit of money, like $325 million. Anyway, which isn't bad. Anyway, my accountant sat down with me and said, you know, Quint, if you put this money in these wealth management accounts, here's how much money you'll have when you're 84 years old. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this money when I'm 84 years old? So we're doing other things with the money. We're building a brand new children's hospital in Pensacola, Florida. We built a brand new YMCA in Pensacola, Florida. We pay for 50 kids to have college educations in Pensacola, Florida. We do the same thing up in Wisconsin because we have results there. What I'm trying to say is I'm one of those wealth that got off the sidelines. And what happens is for some wealth with your downtown, you're going to need a few people that are willing to invest in some buildings even though they might not make a lot of money on the investment. Does that make sense? So it means that sometimes you're going to, now, I don't want them to lose money, though I do lose money on a few. I don't want them to lose money, but the return on investment here won't be as good as probably if they did the same thing in Jacksonville, or the same thing in Amelia Island, or the same thing in somebody else. But the reason you're investing the money is the best return on investment you can get. I was at a program over the weekend. I got lucky and got invited to a program in Bentonville, Arkansas, put on by the Waltons. You know what the Waltons are working on right now? How to create vibrant communities, because they're getting a lot of heat. Because some people think Walmart's what hurt downtowns. So now they're coming back and like making amends. So they're actually creating Walmarts that are downtown Walmarts, little Walmarts. But they also want to make sure that they're doing something. So their grandsons of Sam Walton are Stuart and Tom Walton. So they put on this thing called Heartland Summit. Wasn't that it? Not Health, Heartland Summit. You can look it up. It was this weekend. And they brought all these people in town. Warren Buffett's people, all these people. And they talked about reinvesting in small and mid-America. Because that's what needs to be invested in. Because we can't afford to lose small and mid-market cities, and we've been losing them. If you look at any research, the talent's been going away from them, then you lose your talent, you eventually lose your community. And Stuart Walton talked about different metrics, different metrics than just financial return on investment or increasing stockholder value. And there's other metrics. One of our metrics we use in Escambia County is how many children do you have ready for kindergarten? Because kindergarten readiness connects to high school graduation, which connects to, of course, job. Another thing is population. How many people are moving into your county versus moving out of your county? Now, that's a return on investment. We do a return on investment called quality of life. We use a company called Mason-Dixon Survey Company, and one of the things they ask every year is, do you think your quality of life in the community is getting better or getting worse? And I can send you, you've got my email, quint@quintstuder.com. Some of these things we look better in, some of the things you go up and down. Some years people think it's getting a little better, some years it gets a little worse. The thing is the overall trend line moving up. You can see our report card, it's in the back of our book. When I published the book, we put a 16-measure dashboard in there to sort of know how we're doing. Our median, our salary range is in a big boom right now. Probably yours is too. We got so much construction going on that we can't get enough skilled workers. So all of a sudden salaries have gone skyrocketing in our community. So today, if you're a plumber, you can start at $75,000 to $80,000 in Escambia County, and you can probably go there tonight and get a job tomorrow and start, because all our plumbers now are in Panama City. because everybody's moved. Our skilled labor, bricklayers. We've had to delay projects because we didn't have enough bricklayers in the community. But it's good because it raises the wages. And when you raise the wages of local people, it keeps the money in town. One of the things I talk about in my book, if you haven't read it, is trying to get the people to agree to hire 70% of all people have to be local residents. Because when we do a construction project, if we put 70% of the people have to be local, you have to document, that keeps the money in town. And if you keep the money in town, it moves 7 different times. So some other things here. So I think getting wealth off the sideline is very important. And I think it doesn't mean they have to. It means that somebody says, I'm going to make less money in wealth management, but I'm going to invest it back in the community, not because it's going to help me, but it's going to help somebody else. And that's sort of cool when you think that you're making somebody else's quality of life better. If you've ever been to a Pensacola Blue Wahoo game, my favorite part of a game is between the 4th and 5th inning. All our kids chase a cockroach. They call it the critter run, and this guy or lady dressed like a cockroach. It's sponsored by one of these, people that get rid of cockroaches in one of these companies. And basically, they line up on the bullpen by the right field, and they run across the field. And if you go online to Blue Wahoos and put like Critter Run, you can see it. We'll have 500 to 600 kids running across the field. And for my wife and I, that's the best part of the whole game. Because it's not about winning a game on the field. It's winning the game in the hearts and the minds of your community. How proficient are measuring? So does everybody have a measurement? One of the things we want to do is create the Putnam County dashboard. So you can go and say, how are we doing on these key metrics that we're supposed to get better in? And to what extent are local government entities aligned and working together? Because people today want that. Here's what we've learned. And this is, again, the great part about what we're talking about, this ain't about Democrats. This ain't about Republicans. This isn't about independents. This is about things we can all agree on. We might not agree on things in Washington. We might agree on things in Tallahassee, but we should be able to agree on things locally. We should agree that we should have safe neighborhoods. We should agree the environment should be good. We should agree that people should be paid good wages. We should agree that our kids can get to kindergarten. We should agree that if you have a small business, we can help you get some capital to make that small business work, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So this is good. So you're going to see this survey again and again and again. And I don't expect it to go from a 2.5 to an 8, but it'd be nice to get up into the 3s and then the 4s and then the 5s. So thank you to the newspaper for doing this, and thank you for filling it out. So where do we go next? Let me explain how this works. This is a flywheel. James Collins, and I take a lot of things from business. James Collins studied companies, and he wrote a book called Good to Great, probably one of the best-selling business books around. And he says great companies turn like a flywheel. They sort of have passion. They're usually led by people with great passion. Again, I'm into Walmart today because I just spent 3 days there, and I got to see Sam Walton's office. I got to see his Ford truck that he drove, and it was really sort of cool. But he had a great passion for bringing prices to the common folk, good products to the common folk. Then they talk about, well, then you got to really have a skill set. You got to learn to focus. What are you going to focus on? So Mike, I bet you have a passion for journalism, didn't you? Yeah. And you had a skill in it, right? Hope so. And thank you for doing my column, too, each week. And then what happens is, can you have the economic indicator right? So you can have a great passion, and you can be good at something, but it doesn't mean you can make enough money at it to do it all the time. A lot of us have those hobbies. My dad loved duck hunting. I know, did anybody duck hunters here? My dad loved duck hunting, loved it. When he retired, every gift he got had something to do with duck hunting. I mean, he had a lamp that looked like those things they sit in and they shoot things out of. Everything was, our whole basement was either a stuffed mallard or a wood duck. He loaded his own shells. Everything he did was duck hunting, and he worked at a General Motors plant. So during the day, he worked at a General Motors plant, okay? On the weekends, he worked at Pilot Brothers Junkyard. Why? Because he needed to earn extra money. Why? Because my mom wouldn't let him use his regular money to go duck hunting. So he had to get duck hunting money, okay? We never took really a family vacation because he saved all his vacation days for duck hunting. Now, he would have done anything in his life if he could have been a professional duck hunter. But there wasn't such thing as a professional duck hunter. So what we're talking about is that's business, but this is not business, this is community. So I'm going to give you a community flywheel, which is a little bit different. Number one, it's why you're here. What can we do that has purpose, is worthwhile, and makes a difference? I don't think there's no greater thing we can possibly do than make our communities better places to live. Because that's the real legacy we leave behind. So think about that throughout the rest of the conversation here. And that's why you're here. People that run for office, they have purpose, worthwhile work, making a difference. The ones that don't win, I have great respect for. Running for office, I know you have an election here going on, so do we. It's tough, isn't it? I don't know. Have you watched any of these commercials on TV? Aren't they brutal? I mean, they're just brutal, some of these things on TV. You got to have thick skin. In fact, you have to have thick skin to do what we're talking about right now. You got to have pretty thick skin because all of a sudden when you start trying to move a community forward, a lot of people aren't going to want to move forward. Certain people benefit from keeping the community exactly like it is. Just like certain people benefit from keeping a company exactly like it is. Because if it stays the same, I'll be okay because I'm okay right now. Even some of the people that you think are going to like change don't like change. I did a videotape and sent it to Ben and some others on change. Because also when change starts happening, I start wondering, am I still going to have the influence I've had before? If I turn a lot of this stuff over to a younger generation, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? I used to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody, and now I don't know if that's going to happen. So change is hard almost on everybody. So when we're talking about this, it's not easy. So we're talking about purpose, worthwhile work, and making a difference. So why are you here? It's because of passion. It's not because you're getting paid to be here. You poor lady, you've lived with me the whole day. You're probably just sick of me. Anyway, it's about passion. You have a passion to make life better. What we're going to talk about tonight, the rest of the night, is what actions are being taken and what actions can be taken to hit our last one is what's the outcomes. And though I have outcomes on a different slide, I'll mention some outcomes. You only have about 50% of your kids ready for kindergarten here in your county. If you only got 50% of your kids ready for kindergarten, the odds of them graduating are pretty slim. Now, I am not pointing a finger. We're at 47%. So we're at 47% of our kids being ready. We have a lot in common, Escambia County and Putnam County. We're both counties that are on the lower end of poverty. I mean, we have high poverty. The reason we got picked by the University of Chicago to be their pilot for early brain development, you know why? We had a lot of poverty and a lot of kids not ready for kindergarten. We have a lot of opportunity zones. The new government thing, you have a lot of opportunity zones. You know how you earn an opportunity zone? You have a lot of poverty. So we're much alike. Now we're trying to make inroads just like you, and we've made some pretty good inroads in some areas. Raising the financial solvency of our county, we've made huge impact. We've increased to assessed property value 24.9% in the last 4 years, which is huge. We have over $100 million of new construction going on downtown right now and finishing up. But that's a 10-year journey. That didn't happen the first year or the second year. Where we haven't made as much progress is on the kindergarten readiness, because you really won't know that for 5, 10, 15 to 20 years. So there are certain things you can have impact right away. So for example, if you buy an old building and you put money into it and you open up a restaurant, you've already helped the assessed property value almost immediately. That's maybe a year, and you can have good impact a year to 2 years. Some things take a little bit longer. So one of the things we want to have is we want to have all our kids ready for kindergarten here in Putnam County. Only about half your kids go to VPK right now. Yet your research is like our research. A child that goes to voluntary pre-kindergarten, about 80% of them are ready for kindergarten. Yet you only got about half your kids that are going, and so do we. So that's one of our focuses. We want to make sure you have a vibrant downtown, just a thriving downtown, because that keeps a lot of young people here and helps your tax structure. Your crime rate's going down. We want to make sure it keeps going down, because safety is just brutal. It's just so important. We had 2 shootings downtown Pensacola Saturday night, okay? Now, we're not the smartest person. One of the persons shot himself in the foot. He was going to go shoot somebody else, but he couldn't get the gun out, so he shot himself. So anyway, but let me tell you what that did. We just built a 258 apartment complex downtown Pensacola. We just filled it up with 390 people, and that shooting was a half a block from that apartment complex. What's that going to do now to all those people living in that apartment complex? So making sure that you have a safe community is probably the #1 thing to make sure you have a good quality of life. So we want to talk about attracting talent home and keeping talent here. That's how you're going to measure it. And then we're going to measure it on financial solvency. Is the county in better financial shape now than it was before? So those are some of the results that we're shooting for. So, oh, good. Oh, that's sort of what I just said. So that's really what we're looking for, is what the results can be. Now, we also want to create measurement. So we want to not just say improve, we want to move from here to here. So, and we couldn't have done that before, but we now sort of have an idea because we have some of that. So those are the results. And people ask James Collins, how do you stay passionate about something? You get the results. And when you get the results, you get a little more passionate to keep it going. But it's hard to start. And that's where we're at right now. I mean, that flywheel to get that flywheel turning, is hard. Think of a local, you're lucky. You have Amtrak here, right? We don't. When the Hurricane Ivan came years ago, we lost Amtrak and they've never come back. I'd love to have Amtrak in our community. And it's in a brownfield district, which lends itself to an opportunity zone, will lend itself to some real investment that's going to be some really positive, pretty good investment, real close to this area, downtown. So we don't have that. But if you think of the Amtrak train, it's very hard to get them going. But once a train gets going, James Collins uses the flywheel, it's almost impossible to stop. But it's hard to start. And that's where we're at right now. We're sort of getting the thing sort of started and sort of moving. And that's where we want to be. So here are the 4 circles. If you can remember these 4 circles, these are the things that all have to work together. But sometimes one circle turns quicker than the other ones. One turns faster than the other one. One of the circles is education. When I say education, you think of these key components. You think of 1, children ready for kindergarten. And you have a bright spot in there. You think a number of kids in VPK, number of kids you're hitting at the hospital. We're going to talk about that. The best way to start early brain development is before mom goes home from the hospital with the baby. We'll talk about that, share some things with you. It means number of kids that graduate from high school, number of kids in your local college, number of kids that stay here for college, and those types of things. And we'll come up with what measurements you think fit for the dashboard. When you look at economic development, you're really talking about jobs, wages, what's happening with wages, startups, what happened with startup companies. You want to get a few wins because you want to get a few startups that start up here and keep their money here. There's 4 pillars that used to always drive communities. And those of you that are my age, 67, can you act like I look good for? You say no kid, and you're there. I thought you were older. Anyway, so anyway, I remember these a little more. But the 4 pillars of communities used to be locally owned media. Very few cities have locally owned media. Mike, how long have you been here? 8 months. How long is the average editor, publisher in one of the papers?
In our country, about 10 years.
10 years, which is very long, because usually it's like 3 if you go to a Gannett paper. In the old days, the local publisher, editor knew they were going to live in that town their whole life. We don't have local media anymore. Local health care. We used to have a locally owned hospital, locally run hospital. Again, the executives were going to be here their whole life. Locally owned banks. We used to have locally owned banks. Locally owned banks are a little easier to get money from because they're local. And those executives stayed in town their whole life, so did their kids and grandkids. And locally owned companies. We don't have those 4 pillars anymore. So who's going to take their place? Because they're not coming back. It's got to be you. It's got to be the general community making up for those lost pillars. And that's why we do a lot of things we're going to talk about here later in civic engagement. So when we look about economic development, we're really talking about job creation. How do we create jobs? And that's what your kids will come home for. Kids don't come home just to come home or just to stay home. They want opportunity, so on. We talk about downtown, and when you look at downtown, according to the Gallup survey, Soul of the Cities, here's what a vibrant town consists of. There's 4 elements, but it's really hard to get these in any order. So because you wish, if I could get them in this order, you'd win. One of the key elements is getting people living downtown, getting residents living downtown. Now, if you could go first, that would change this community overall. Can you imagine if somebody put in 300 apartments downtown with retail down below and filled them up? What would that do to your downtown? Then your retailers would be fighting to get downtown. Your office people would want to have an office space downtown, and nobody would have to worry about programming because we'd insist on programming. In our apartment complex we just built with 390 people, we program the heck out. It's like being on a cruise ship, all the time. But the problem is you can't start with residential because nobody wants to live downtown if there's not a lot to do. So here's what the 4 phases are. Number 1, they're programming. How do you queue a lot of things downtown? And some are failures, some are not. You don't have, what's probably the most popular downtown event is organic farmers markets today. They're all over the place. Those types of things. There's white table dinners on the street, closing the street. And you're doing a lot of programming, but how do you do enough programming to make it really stick? Again, this isn't just about Pensacola. It took us really, it's 2000, probably 8, 9 years to get to this point. But starting November 1st, we have a sophisticated project called Foo Fest. It's November 1st through November 9th, and it's all arts and music downtown for 9 straight days. They bring in cubed art and do it, and sometimes it's so cool they just sort of keep it there. Okay? Then on the 14th through the 16th is Entrecon. That's a 3-day small business conference to help people learn skills to build their business, to start their business. Now, it took a while to get there. Oh, that's 450 people. Foo Fest will be about 10,000 time they get through the 8, 9 days of going through there. Now, it didn't start like that. It started much smaller. Our first Entrecon was 150 people. What I'm trying to say is you program in downtown. Next, there's usually retail and entertainment. And it's that restaurant that opens up. Our first big restaurant was Global Grill that did tapas. You ever hear of those? It took me a while to get used to it. I was used to like big plates full of stuff. I thought, this is it. Anyway, there's restaurants and entertainment. Then Joe Apson started a pizza beer place called Hop Jacks. And you're going to think when I'm done that all Pensacola does is drink alcohol. Anyway, then there was a sort of a gourmet hamburger place called Tin Cow. And then my wife opened up a coffee shop, a pretty cool coffee shop. I mean, really cool when you go inside in an old building, and selling bodacious olive oil. When she first told people she was going to sell olive oil there, people thought she was nuts. Why would I buy olive oil for this much when I can get it somewhere else in a gallon? Anyway, she sells about $700,000 worth of olive oil a year out of her little teeny store. People are bathing in olive oil, and that's why we're all greasy in Pensacola. Mike's got our olive oil, right? Did you like our olive oil? It's very good, isn't it? And then up above is cooking classes. So up above the olive oil store and the coffee shop is a kitchen for cooking classes. And pretty much right now we have cooking classes every night that people sign up for different cooking classes. So, but that's part of where this thing goes. And then you get a little more things, then you get a little more things, and then you're named one of the top 10 cities and streets in the United States of America. And all of a sudden, because there's no more openings on the street, they start moving over, and then you get a thickening. It takes a while to get it, but we've got to figure out here in Palatka, where can we get that critical mass to start making that energy and that synergy where people want to eat outside, stay outside, walk outside, and so on. And that's the bigger challenge. but that's part of downtown, that retail and entertainment. Then if people are programming down there, they're having fun down there, they're eating down there, they start saying, I wouldn't mind having an office down here. So then you pick up some more office space downtown. And a lot of this is sort of crazy. By the way, we didn't do this with any outside investment because people wouldn't invest yet. It was almost all people that lived here saying, I'm going to take that chance. I'm going to do something in that. Today we have 3 brand new office buildings downtown and 1 rehabbed office building, over 200,000 square feet of office space downtown that didn't exist 10 years ago. Again, remember, it's a decade. But probably the first one opened up in 2012. Then we just opened up 2 more this year. So that's 4 office buildings, 3 new, 1 rehab, spread out over 6 years. So none of this happens overnight. And the last thing is residential. If you can get people living downtown, it does all sorts of great things for you. That's some of the great challenges we're talking about. And downtown is probably the key component of really moving a community, because that's your melting pot. And you have so much going for you. I mean, I'm staying at the Hampton Inn, and last night I got in late, and I just pulled the thing so you can sleep. And today I opened up this drape. Do you guys know you got this beautiful river right there? I don't know if you're aware of that. No, it's just gorgeous. And you got this neat place, and you got this downtown road that pops right into it. 10 years from now, you want to look out and not even be able to see it because people are kayaking, renting kayaks, renting Orvis-type clothes. You'll never get the franchise players here. That's why it's important to grow your own. So we have a clothing store downtown, a couple of them now, but they're all locally owned because franchises aren't going to come to Palatka just like they won't come to Pensacola. It's not big enough, not enough foot traffic. So that's why you got to grow your own entrepreneurs and support the heck out of them as they grow. So if you go down the street, you'll see a Pilates studio here, but we don't allow anything to do anything without selling something up front. So when they first wanted to put a Pilates thing in, we said to them in the building, you have to also sell retail Pilates, stuff. That slippery clothes you wear. Anyway, and I tell you, at first they didn't want to do it, and now they're shrinking their Pilates side because their retail side is more, now they got a competitor down the street that's on Lululemon. So it's sort of interesting. And then next to that is these guys started, more of a surf type shop, that type of clothes and different things and that type of stuff. And can you imagine, he's selling things like paddle boards and kayaks, and you can't even put them in our town. I mean, you'd have to drive 2 bridges. You could throw them, I don't know if you know this, but you could pop them in right down here on your river. You got a better location than we got. Then you got a local jewelry store run by a young lady who came home and she started selling jewelry. And then we got this guy named Bubba Watson. You ever hear of him? He has a candy store there called Bubba's Sweet Spot, the golfer. And then next to that is a sushi place opened up. And then next to that is a restaurant. And then on the other side of the street, there's the coffee shop, the olive oil, a lunch bar, a women's clothing store, and a men's clothing store. Those were 2 empty buildings in 2008 that had been sitting empty for years. One of the things that hurts communities is when the malls opened up years ago, people moved out of downtown, and then instead of a retail being on the first floor, it was office space on the first floor. And you don't blame somebody, they have to pay a mortgage, but that didn't create foot traffic. And then all of a sudden what happens is you have hardly anybody downtown, and now the malls also went out. So now you sort of got bookends, neither one works. So that's what we're trying to recreate. So we took 2 empty, so the challenge is we also had people that had buildings that sat on them and didn't do anything to them, which then creates what they call gaps in the teeth because there's nothing there. And all of a sudden then that creates a death spiral in your community. And if you have faced that, every town and mid-market city in the country has faced property that should be developed, it's not being developed, that sits there empty, and that means everything around it gets a little bit worse, and that's what it's been like, and that's what we had to turn. So we took 2 old buildings, did that. Across the street, we had an empty lot, and this was something that, gosh, this was a big political mess. Somebody wanted to put trailers on this empty lot and sell food out of Airstream trailers, and they had never done that. and it was a big fight, and now we have 4 trailers sitting on that thing. You can get like tacos here, get grilled cheese here, and it's called Al Fresco, and it's a hot spot. And then on the other side, probably not what we wanted, but you couldn't stop, a person bought and put a new bank there. But at least what they did is on the second floor, they moved office space there, because it's all about bringing people downtown and bringing foot traffic. The only good thing about new banks today, you don't have drive-throughs, so they don't take as much space. But I'm trying to say that's sort of that intersection we talked about that starts, and you got to figure out where's your intersection. And the closer it is to that river, I think the better shot you have, but it's going to take a little bit of a while. And the last circle is civic engagement. That's what this is. We also have hired 12 people to come in our community and give talks, and these are pretty cool people. In fact, we pay them quite a bit, and they range anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 an hour. But we have all that material, and we're giving it to Palatka. So you might not get the person, but you got all what they say. How to create walkability. Parking. You know, we thought people, when we had no one downtown, they thought we had a parking problem. We had to show them in circles, we got parking, you just got to walk. One of the people showed a great picture on walkability. They showed a fitness center, and they showed people taking an escalator up to the fitness center. Okay? We were lucky enough to put a brand new Y downtown, and one of the big complaints is, where are we going to park? Well, aren't you going to the Y to like work out? Anyway, so you got to get people used to walking a little bit more. But we've done it in malls. I will tell you, at the Pensacola Mall, I used to park way out, and by the time I walked to like J.C. Penney or wherever I'm walking, Dick's Sporting Goods store in the mall, by the time I walked, and then when my wife and I'd be at the mall, you know what we'd have to say? Have we been down that spot yet? Have we done on? So I'd walk the entire mall, and now all of a sudden, now it's downtown, I want to park right next to it so I don't have to walk. So part of that is changing that mindset. When you have a parking problem, it's good, good, good. That means something is really happening in the community. So civic engagement is what you're doing right now, and that would be called getting the critical mass. If you look at change, I'm going to just do a few minutes on change. There's 4 phases of change. The first change is creating that burning platform. Somebody in here created that burning platform, because if you look at your survey results, that's a burning platform. That we don't want to be a 2. We don't want to be a 2.8. We've got to do something different. James Collins says one of the biggest reasons people don't become great is because they're good. So you're in better shape at a 2 to get, you have a better chance of going from a 2 to an 8 than somebody has going from a 6 to an 8, because they're just going to get a little bit lazy. After the burning platform, you can create the critical mass, and that's what we're doing right now. You know, if you don't want to be a good old boy, then get involved. Get on the table. And that's what we're trying to do, a big table. Number 3, you have to get some success, or else you lose enthusiasm. And number 4, you can't declare victory. So let's talk about some things that you might not even be aware of. Your hospital is starting to invest in early brain development. So your mothers, I would say probably in the next 90 days, when a baby is born here at your hospital, your moms are going to get a tutorial on how to build a baby's brain. We've so far in Escambia County done 7,800 women, and after the tutorial, they fill out an iPad, they do research, and they basically rank their knowledge of building a brain from a 6.4 to a 9.4. There's only one thing you can do to change education, it's get the moms in the hospital before they go home. Because once you learn this stuff, you can't close your eyes. I'm so into this, when somebody's pushing a stroller, I think the kids should all be facing this way, not that way. You know, we also have looked at our playgrounds, and we're putting in decals on all our playgrounds because they're basically meant for physical fitness, and the decals are numbers, letters, alphabet. Every place we can put learning, we're putting learning. When you go to a stadium and you walk up the stairs, you count the stairs. You build learning into the environment. Lift Putman, I don't know if you know about that, but that's building up more people into VPK. That's a bright spot you got going. Do you know that your college, according to the survey, according to the Aspen Institute, ranks your St. John's River State College in the top 10% of all community colleges in the United States? Here's my message. Yeah, you got a long way to go, but gosh darn it, do a better job appreciating what you got. I heard a tragic story recently. A company was recruiting someone to come into Putnam County, Palatka, and they ran into 3 people, and the first 3 people said, "Why would you want to move here?" And guess what they told the company? "I'm not coming. I'm not coming." When I was in healthcare, and you're in healthcare, aren't you? Right there? Yes. Yeah. When a nurse manager came up to me, said, "Quint, what can I do? Nobody wants to work on our unit." She said, "We're understaffed, and nobody works harder than people on our unit. And I can't get anyone to work on my unit. What should I do?" I said, "Shut up." My gosh, I don't want to work on your unit. I'm not telling you to lie. I'm telling you to tell the truth. Though we have ways to go, you told us on the survey. When I say we, I apologize. I sort of feel part of this. But there's some bright spots you got to build on. You got to build on your strengths. That's a pretty cool thing to have a college ranked in the top 10%. Your high school graduation rates are on the rise right now. So those are some positive things that come in the bright spot of education. How about economic development? You had a $500 million investment in Georgia Pacific. Matching grants, you can get matching grants for business and residential investment right now. But again, a lot of times people aren't aware of these things. People don't know they exist, and you've got to really be strong on this. You got the Grand Gables Inn, which I think is a bed and breakfast. Is that right? You have a few of them that opened up, and I apologize if I'm missing things. These are just for me being here just today. I got in last night, so this is me just asking and nosing around today. You have lots of programming in downtown. You got the Bass Pro event coming back. And I guess this guy who owns this has money, doesn't he? Doesn't the guy, what's his name? Johnny who? Morris. And he's got money, right? Bunch. When he comes into town, we want him to say, "I need to open up a shop here. I need to stick around here. This is too cool a place for me not to be involved in." And that's on ESPN. So that's where you showcase the heck out of this community, because that's where you get the reputation. Coming soon. Do you know, this is sort of bizarre, James Fallows, who writes for The Atlantic for over 40 years, he decides cities can now be based on how hip they are and how many craft beer places they have. Anybody been to Asheville, North Carolina? They're like the hip of hip. They have 88 craft beer places downtown right now. Yeah, it's funny that people even remember being in Asheville, North Carolina. So you've got one of them coming. Probably the big win, since I've been here last time, is you have somebody that's purchased Hotel James and now is going to put money in and remodel it. Because when you have a dead downtown and a hotel sitting there boarded up, you're not going to convince people this is the place to be. So when you see this person, tell them thank you. I talked to them today. They are not going to get rich doing this. You know what else? I didn't want to tell them this. It's going to cost a lot more than they think. I mean, someone that's done a lot of these old buildings, it's a lot more expensive than you think. Civic engagement. Hopefully I'm part of it. I think we continue to educate. We have all sorts of people, I think, that we can share with you that can come here, that we've used, that we've talked to. People want to change communities. And there's a certain heart for small and mid-market cities. When I was in special ed, the other thing I did after a while is I traveled to 10 school districts. And they were small. And they were ones that didn't have enough resources, so you'd have to work on sharing resources with the kids. You have we're creating a Palatka library for civic engagement, so you're going to be able, and hopefully we'll work with the newspaper, that you'll be able to go and pull civic engagement and things like that to watch the videos and educate yourself. You're participating in surveys. And there's something called the Palatka Young People. If you want to, Palatka Young Professionals, Benji Bates is back there. We have found this to be real vital, because sometimes young people feel they're not old enough to get engaged. They're not on the board of directors of this. They're not on this. And they want to have input. So by creating young groups of people and giving them ability to have input is really, really vital. We do a quality of life survey every year, and we let our young group is the ones who, it's an outside company, but they're the ones that facilitate it and roll it out to the community, because that gets them engaged. for certain things. You know the referendum I talked about? The young people were the people that drove that referendum because they're going to be here their whole life. So getting your young people engaged is vital. Some other bright spots. Do you know that since 2015, when HCA came in and took over your hospital, they have put $25 million into your hospital? Let me give you another story. There's something called Leapfrog, and Leapfrog is an outside company run by business people, so they're not influenced by healthcare people, and they give grades to hospitals. Do you know in 2015, your grade was an F? That's the lowest you can get. Now, I put a question mark there because it hasn't been officially released, so you're not supposed to let people know what your new score is going to be. So I'm going to tell you, but you got to keep it here. At the end of October, when Leapfrog nationally presents the new scores that you can go in and read, every hospital in the United States of America, instead of reading an F by your hospital, people are going to read a B. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it? And you have a new chief nurse officer, and she came from Pensacola, so she dumped us for you. How's that, eh? Your crime rate has dropped. You have amazing trails. Yesterday, Dottie, when she wasn't coughing, was spending a lot of time learning about your trails. Bentonville, Arkansas is creating their whole ecotourism on bike trails. Bike trails and natural resources, and you've got it. They don't have a river, though. You have a river. They got this little pond, okay? So you've got a river. You've got these eco trails, so they can be pretty remarkable. That's the other thing that'd be cool. I think you have one I saw, but bike shops are getting pretty popular around the area and to rent. If I came here and wanted to rent a kayak or rent something or ride a bike, it's sort of popular. And you have all these natural resources to do it. You have a rich history. You have an extremely rich history that can, a lot of communities are creating historic districts and really giving tours. We have segues. We did a thing called Pensacola Business Challenge. It's in the book where companies competed for $50,000 for the best business plan, and then they had to actually take the money and go into business. And one of the ones that didn't win was a Segway tour company. They didn't win, but they started the company up anyway. This is their 6th year. So when you come into the community, you get on Segways with the tour guide, and then they give you a tour of the community and one of the big tours through the historic district. Andrew Jackson hung out in Pensacola, Florida. This type of stuff. If you go up north, Lincoln slept everywhere. There ain't a town in Illinois that Lincoln didn't lay on, some bed someday, or Wisconsin. And you have a low cost of living. Again, because I have so much Arkansas information, they're right now recruiting like crazy companies out of San Francisco, young startups to come to Arkansas, but they've created a cool office building for them to work in. They call it GRIT, and they have resources for them when they come there to build their company. These are just startups, one or two people. And here's what they did. They found out startup companies that were run by people that loved a dirt bike and do all that biking. And they did all this research, and have these software people pull 100 of them, and then they sent them each a box from Bentonville, Arkansas, and it had virtual reality glasses in where they can see what it's like to be on their bike trails. Then they put dirt in from their bike trail, and they told them they need to return the dirt to Bentonville, Arkansas. Next weekend, 10 of those people are coming to Bentonville, Arkansas. That's the type of creative stuff that you can start to do. And you've got those same type of trails right here, and you have a great river, and you got that low cost of living. And that's why they're recruiting them from San Francisco. Because what can you get in San Francisco for $300,000? Nothing. Nothing. One of the better spots from the homeless area. But when you go to Arkansas for $300,000, you can get a pretty cool place. Or you can lease a decent place for $1,200 or $1,000 a month. There you can't touch it. So what's next? What's next is really your input. You're going to be getting a survey, working with the paper again, and it's really going to ask you to spread around what would you like to see downtown, because we're going to, though everything's important, we're moving other things. I think downtown needs the most attention, but we got to find out what you want. What would you support? What would you go to? because it does no good to say something if anyone doesn't want to use it or doesn't want to go to it. And it could be all sorts of things. Our nail salon downtown does pretty well, but it didn't come at first. These things come in sequencing. We have an oyster place now where you can see them shuck oysters and get oysters. And, who knows what your ideas are and what they can be. So that's what's next. So let me close with this. I have a daughter, my youngest daughter's getting married November 2nd. That's like pretty soon, okay? Now she's like 33. So anyway, and she's still living with us. And I got to tell you, we're not sure she's moving out. No, seriously. Like they don't have a place to live. And my mom lives with me. We're going to have we're going to be one of these families that, we're going back in time. Three generations and so on. So my first daughter, though, got married June 13th she got married of 1995, June 13th. She's got 4 kids. Oldest one just went to college and so on. They go like from 9 to 18. So she got married June 13th. And being father of the bride, I learned 3 things that I was supposed to do. Shell out, show up, and shut up. The 3 S's of being father of the bride, okay? So anyway, she was getting married, and remember, we had lived in Wisconsin, so by the time we moved down in 1996, she was already finishing college in Wisconsin, okay? That's a Wisconsin accent you just heard. Anyway, so what happened was she met Shannon Kennedy, and they're getting married, and I didn't realize, but she'd been planning her wedding even before she found a guy, right, Anna? Anna's been dating this guy for 8 weeks, and she's wondering, should I marry him or not? I said, why? I said, women think like way ahead, This guy's wondering little things, and she's like into what's the kid's going to look like, is he tall? Anyway, so anyway, my daughter wanted to get married outside in June. June wedding. Wisconsin is nice. The ice is now gone. Anyway, and she wanted to get married outside, and she wanted a gazebo. And it's almost like looking outside the Hampton Inn there. Now, there wasn't any piece of land that had a gazebo. I have learned that you can just rent about anything in the world. So she got a gazebo, and they put it on the Rock River in Janesville, Wisconsin, in this park in Janesville, okay? Now, this thing's moving along. It's June 12th, and I get there. My wife's been there all week. I get there June 12th, okay? It's the rehearsal. And I'm with my daughter at the rehearsal at St. Mary's Catholic Church. Now, I'm sort of wondering, why are we doing this practice inside when the wedding's outside? Wouldn't that be a good question, sir? But I've been told to shut up, okay? So as we stand there, she now starts giving me new information. She says, the priest would marry me outside until I got married inside. So right now, instead of rehearsing, we're really exchanging our vows. Now, I wanted to ask some more questions. And then she said I had to be quiet about it because she didn't want anyone to know because that would ruin tomorrow. So I go down there, and we do this stuff, and they do, like Shannon knew it was the real deal, her husband. So they get married, and then we go to the Janesville Country Club for the rehearsal dinner. Well, the next morning, I get up, and my wife's already gone. Everybody's gone. It's just me and my youngest son, Mike, the guy who lives in Chicago that doesn't drive. Anyway, so we go get our tuxes. It's like 11 in the morning, and we go to a tux place in Wisconsin. Now, he was in high school or like middle school when this happened, so we got measured in Pace Boulevard in Pensacola. They just measure you, and I guess they send your measurements up there. If they would have said what color tux, we would have had no idea. We didn't have no idea. I didn't get to pick out anything I wore. The only thing I got to pick out was my underwear, my T-shirt, and my socks. Now, I even had like shoes you had to rent. I got to tell you, I felt like a wimp until I told the story one time. When I got done, a guy came up to me and looked at me like I was John Wayne. He said, "You got to pick out your own socks?" I said, Yep. So now, at 1 o'clock, we go to the wedding place when the wedding's at 3. Now, again, obviously, these are new rules. So we're there, and they're doing pictures before the wedding. groomsmen, the bride and groom, and all these things. And they took some family pictures, and then I had like an hour to kill. And I'm walking around, and a guy walks in with this bird cage with some doves. Now, this is a wild park. So I just think, I'm going to get rid of them. I'm looking for something to bring value. So I go to my daughter, and I say, I'll get rid of them. She goes, oh, don't. The doves have arrived. This is the stupidest waste of money I've seen at the whole entire wedding. Why would anyone want birds, birds like doves that look like pigeons to me, glorified pigeons, going over your head when you're dressed nice? Now, I'm suspicious. So I go up and I say to the dove guy, when do you let go of these doves? He said, well, when the minister says, now I give you Mr. and Mrs., which was another problem. The priest that married him inside wouldn't marry him outside, so we had to get a renegade priest, so the rehearsal wasn't matching the wedding. No, I'm listening, because I want to know when he lets these doves go. And sure enough, the guy gets up in the front of the gazebo, and I'm thinking, he says, now I'm going to give you Mr. and Mrs., and I'm listening, and he says, now let me give you Mr. and Mrs. I never saw my daughter turn around. I was like a duck hunter in a blind, waiting for those doves to fly. For what we're paying, they're getting up there. They did 2 quick swoops, and they go down. But now I'm at the wedding still. The doves are back there. The renegade priest is up there with the gazebo, and I'm sitting there, and we're on a river, like your river. But your river is so much bigger. And this is a small river, and the guys are probably in their 20s, are coming down on a speedboat, and they look and they see a gazebo, 300 people, bride and groomsmen, bridesmaid, unbelievable. Now, they got some options. They can, one, say, you know what, this looks like a wonderful spiritual event. I think I'll turn around and not disturb it. Number 2, they could put the engine in troll and go on the other side and go real slow, not to bother it. Or they could pick option 3, which is the one they picked. They started doing 360s right on the other side of the gazebo, and then they stopped. And it's like you want to look at, you can't act like you're looking at something, but you're looking at something. So you're like acting like you're looking at the gazebo, but you're looking at them. And they look at this guy, and they don't know him, but he's about their age, in the 20s, and they decide to get involved in the wedding. The one guy gets up and goes, hey, it's not too late. We'll pick you up at the pier. And I'm thinking, it is too late. They got married last night, So while this is going on, I got a gazebo, I got doves, I got a daughter that got married the night before, and I got a guy yelling in a boat. Now, I got to tell you, I grew up in the 60s. I'm thinking I'm having a drug flashback at my daughter's own wedding. I'm having an out-of-body experience here. This ain't it. And then the priest gets up, and I'm waiting for him to say, I give you Mr. and Mrs. And he says, if you throw a pebble in the pond, how much water does it impact? And I'm thinking, who cares? Just like you're probably thinking. Let's get this thing over with. And then he basically walks down. Now I'm really worried because he's walking down, and I'm staying here because of the cameras, but he walks down, and I'm like, right where you are, sir, right here, though, father of the bride. And I'm thinking he's going to ask me. And I didn't listen. Pebble, pond, I don't know. Doesn't matter how big the pebble is, how deep the pond is. I'm looking at my wife like I'm going to ask her, and I say, I'm not going there. So I just do no eye contact with this guy. And he turns around, and he goes back up, and he says, when you throw a pebble in a pond, it impacts every bit of water in that pond. And then he explains, if you're at this wedding, you're here for a reason. And you might not think that you've had any impact on this bride and groom, but you probably have. And he said, there's people in your life that have impacted you that don't know they've impacted you. And I thought of some people that impacted me. Until that day, I never talked about Mrs. James, who was my 3rd grade teacher, taught me how to read. Mr. Fry, who was my 6th grade teacher, who just made me feel good. Or my high school soccer coach, who made me feel special. And he was the special ed teacher at our high school, why I became a special ed teacher. And Herbert Spencer says sometimes our contempt prior to investigation can keep us in the darkness. Just like I have people that come up to me in Pensacola and say, I was against this and I didn't really understand it and I'm for it now. And he said, don't underestimate the difference you make in people's lives We're all a pond, and we live in life. And that's what we live in here in Putnam County. You're all pebbles in a pond, and you have a chance to make a big difference just like you've made. Some people will never remember that. But we don't do it because we want to be remembered. We don't do it because we want to be thanked. We do it because it's the right thing to do. Because really what we're talking about is our values. And what are our values? How do we create the greatest place for people to live wherever we live? Because our human responsibility is to do what we can do to make our communities the best they can be. And thank you for allowing me to be with you here in Putnam County. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank everyone for coming out. Let's give Quint and his staff another big round of applause. Yes, we can. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone?
Who's playing tonight on Monday Night Football?
I saw some people taking pictures of the slideshow. If you'd like to get on our mailing list or get a copy of the slideshow, I'll just have you sign here, and I'll be happy to email it.
And we're going to work real closely with the newspaper, everything we have, because that gives you a place to go. The surveys will be there. You did such a good job filling out this survey. How much time you fill it in, and anybody who fills in the survey will be eligible for a $1,000 drawing, and then we'll find out what do you want your downtown to be, because you know better than what would make down here than anybody else.
Yes.
Willing to give $1,000 for people to do the survey, can we maybe give some incentive to younger people to come to these meetings, like maybe a $25 gift?
Sure.
If you're under 30 years old.
Yeah, let's do it. I think it's a good idea. Why not?
There's no young people here.
No, I love it. You're young. I thought you were young. Come on, come on. I would card you if I was in a bar. Anybody else have a... You're young, aren't you? Yeah, they're young, but I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm sorry. I'm hearing impaired here, so I get real close to people.
This is my first time of being here, but is there an email list or anything that we can get on that we know what's going on and then we're all...
Okay, well, that's what we'll create that. Ben, you create that, right? Email list? Yeah?
I'd like to give one attaboy to the newspaper. They're doing a great job.
All right. Take it when you can get it. Well, listen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. And we'll, any other, Quint at quintstuder.com. Any questions, any information you want, Google me. You can find out all sorts of stuff. Anyway, thank you very much.